now we're going. All right, so yeah, so we're talking about really the four aspects of the Sage Intacct Forms and Operational Flows application. The first of which is going to be the forms piece to this. There's a lot of forms applications on the market today, so we're catching a lot of clients that may have existing forms solutions like FormStack or Monday.com, Smartsheet, Microsoft Form. These are kind of the main players. What those applications all have in common is that they don't integrate with the accounting system. So generally, there's some type of import or custom services through connectors that you have to do to connect the dots to get data to flow into Intacct. Sage Intacct Forms and Operational Flow is from the ground up. So it is designed to integrate from the get. It kind of puts the power to be able to send data seamlessly back into Sage Intacct into the hands of really the most novice of users, frankly, to build workflows accordingly. Now, the flow elements to this as well, we're going to talk about the dynamics of this application's workflow capabilities. You'll find some just superior functionality and opportunity around workflow inside of the system, which is one of the main reasons why people look to kind of bring this application in alongside as a companion to Sage Intacct to handle maybe quirky scenarios, maybe custom scenarios that just require something over and beyond what you have native inside of Sage Intacct, or possibly extend out the audience of which we might be gathering those purchase requisitions or pay requests from a vendor, things that are outside of the normal accounting user. This workflow is designed to not only extend the form, but also the workflow capabilities upstream is what we talk about. And then we're going to dive into kind of the portal aspect of kind of the idea of being able to create these privatized experiences for our most valuable relationships, obviously customers, vendors, donors, constituents of any type. You can effectively centralize and manage and control those experiences. And the reason we do that is we're trying to obviously reduce as much risk of clicking on the bad link, the things that get lost in email. We're trying to protect that. So really the idea of bringing together kind of portal collaboration rather than emails back and forth inside and around the accounting department is a big risk exposure reduction by the use of this application. And then we're going to talk about kind of the aggregation of why would I want to commit, like our customer base, an average of 18 processes to this forms and workflow platform. It's because it's really becoming this enterprise file management strategy that's within the confines of the Microsoft ecosystem. This application is on the Azure cloud, Azure SQL database, public API to be able to do custom routines around or extract or send in data. So you've got a lot of flexibility, but it's on the same server that OneDrive and SharePoint live on as well. So these are kind of the four elements of the application that we're going to dive into. I'm going to PowerPoint you to death here, so we're going to jump into the software here real quickly. But really, Sage Intacct Forms, it really offers the same flexibility and ease of use that you would find in a Google form, Microsoft form, FormStack, but it has enterprise level sophistication and integration capability. So that's the big kind of takeaway. So it's kind of a step up to a lot of those applications. It's seamless out of the box. We're not talking about import exporting. It's powerful, conditional workflows, and then we call layered workflow exceptions, where there's always can always add a wrinkle to a scenario, which gives you a lot of freedom without having to jeopardize, maybe a larger implementation strategy. And then also kind of the enterprise content management, but having that anchored to the Sage Intacct dimensional structure is the big goal. So, where does this application sit? We can go into really any department within a company, and we can be talking about, donor management or vendor management, customer onboarding, procure to pay, expense management. All of these things are yeses in regards to where we generally live, but what we like to do is kind of take a step back and look at it from the Sage global offering perspective, which is, let's say 10, 15 years ago, generally accounting was kind of the source of truth, and then you would kind of bolt on these applications that might do your credit card management, it might do your procurement or purchasing side of the house, it might do some invoice routing, things of that nature. If you haven't looked at Sage Intacct lately, there's a lot of core functionality that Sage has built out. You have the companionship of some new investments that Sage has made around expense management, and then AI, obviously with AP automation. And then you bring in this application as well, where we're talking about vendor onboarding, vendor portals, draw requests, vendor updates, and things of that nature. there's a lot of functionality that really kind of creates a holistic solution around the entire procure to pay scenario. So I definitely kind of we'll talk about some of these processes and kind of where this application goes to kind of either A, fill in some gaps that you might already have applications for. This application is a great filler. It's priced to be a filler as well. Or B, it might be able to kind of give you an excuse to maybe remove some of the third-party applications and consolidate into kind of a complete Sage ecosystem as well. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a lay of the land, we'll talk a little bit about the application in general. And then from there, we're going to dive into some more specific ways of how do we go about building these scenarios up. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just kind of like, what does this application look like and feel like day in the life? You'll see here, I'm logged in. This is actually our live experience. We use our system heavily internally. You'll see over here to the right, I've got some favorited forms here that I do on a daily basis or more frequent basis. We might adjust subscriptions. We might produce a sales order or purchase requisition. My expense report is in here. I also have some non-Sage Intacct things, like I might do a CEO report that goes to a board of directors or takes some meeting minutes in a board meeting, something to that effect. HR event, feature request, right? Some things are destined for the accounting, some are not, but they're all inside of one ecosystem. But if you kind of explore down here, every single department has process controls for it. So if you came to work for the organization, you would be given a login to the portal, if you will, the employee portal, and this is every process that you can dream up. Now, just to kind of give you a little example of what does a form look like? Well, if I launch this form here, it pops out from the right, and this is just our interpretation of an expense report. This example, just to kind of give you a little bit of a feel for it, I'll add my expenses here, throughout the week. I'll take pictures of my receipt and document the transaction. I might add a handful of these as I go through the week, and then it'll ultimately roll up into a nice little grid that looks kind of like the spreadsheet that we used to do. Same thing if I went to New Orleans for a little investor meeting, and then there you go, it's doing my calculation for mileage, giving me my total amount, and then I can ultimately sign and accept, and then move it on to my approver, right? So the concept here of a form is just how I interpret whatever that form might be, just like any other form that we might build in Adobe or we might build in a Google form. Now, from the form perspective, I can launch any form over here to the right based upon my role in the company. That's which forms I have access to, even what questions are on that form. I may not see all of the accounting functions that accounting or my supervisor might put on. Those are just the questions that I'm privy to see because of my role. So we really can make a more sophisticated experience inside of the forms themselves. Now, in addition to this, whenever these forms are submitted for approval, my experience is a single user interface. It's a single inbox. The to-do forms are things waiting on me for review. I kind of oversee a lot of kind of the senior consultant stuff about how we're doing implementations, like anything that we might see during an implementation that might be a concern. This is where I can chat with the team members that are involved in each one of our implementations. And this just kind of becomes like this is an important account because it's got some local ties to us here in Baton Rouge. So this is my way of communicating and then thumbs upping this particular scenario. But you'll see, not only do I have discovery worksheets in here, but I might have employee evaluations and credit cards and purchase requisitions. So your to-do lists are things that are waiting on you for review. Your in progress are things that you've already dealt with, but they haven't made it to Intacct yet. So you can kind of keep an eye on that PO. That might be a larger sum. And then also too, all items would be everything that's ever passed through your inbox. So if you can appreciate this, we have a single hub for all of the forms and a single place to approve it. And this concept of an assembly line review process, this is what affords companies a 90% reduction in time and cost to implement a new process. It's just another form in the list that you want to roll out, another form for the portal. It's just another thing that pops up in their inbox that they can ultimately approve, hold, reject, and then collaborate with the team involved. So that repetitive nature where we're not rolling out modules and things that we have to, to pay for and things of that nature, you can build as many forms as you want inside of this ecosystem, and it just kind of becomes the de facto hub for all process improvement. Okay, so kind of getting back to the home screen, I can kick off any form that I want. I can approve and review based upon the conditions that we put in, and we'll talk about how we go build those processes up here in a minute. And then also my ability to self-service file management and go and search and retrieve This is another really big value proposition because A, if you think about it, it's on the same server that we would have in a big SharePoint build out, a Microsoft, same server, it's a little bit more tied to your accounting system, a lot more, and it's all in a very simple and digestible experience. So let's just say, for example, I might want to go look at, transactions. Although I could report on any form that I have access to, these are like my favorited reports. So this might be where I'm looking at all the contracts that we have in place, and I might have a couple of views of contracts expiring in the next few days, or maybe contracts by project. In this example, these are some investor transactions. So this is where I can take that form, which could be an investor transaction form, and I check off which questions on the form do I want to be my column header. So very similar to like a Google form. And in this case, I can global search. I can kick this out to a spreadsheet. I can filter within a column. I can also kind of move and migrate and configure this how I want, even to create an export file if I want to in a particular format. And then I can also have saved views of these. Maybe I want to see, investments by round, or maybe by investor, right? Or whatever the case, or by type. This is where I can group, sort, filter, and even drag and drop to get that grouping with totaling all here inside of the system. And then I can also drill into each form to be able to not only see the information on the form, but even pick up that conversation with the team that was involved in it originally. So this gives me a really nice way of peeking in, and it's kind of an air traffic controller of all of the vendor onboards, for example, or all of the credit card receipts, or all the purchase requisitions. So this lets me see it through the lens of the actual form type. Now, in addition to this, we also create what we call a channel, and this is almost like a CRM view of your Sage Intacct dimensional data. So over here, you have effectively every dimension in Intacct afforded to you. So if you wanted to go in at a vendor level or at a project level, or whichever the case, right? You can go and search at any of these levels. So for example, this is one I've got at a customer level. So this is going and showing me all of the customer data out of Intacct that I'm privy to. This is showing me the chronological order of all of that activity. Like in this case, you can see we won their client, we sold them a services agreement, we did a project scope, we sold them the project scope, and then we did the project completion form. So that's kind of like the chronological order of this particular account. But it also organizes it based upon form type. So if you were, let's just say, you were a nonprofit, you wanted to go in and check up on maybe a grant recipient's complete file, not only would you see their original application, but you'd see their quarterly filings, their draw requests, their award letters. All of those subsequent forms that were filled out and then reference that vendor ID would populate here. So example here, if I go into the sales logs and I want to go see, what did we sell them originally? I can go in and see the one back from 2020 and then see, okay, here's the sales order that was sold, and then here's the notes that were put on there by the salesperson, and then the accountant who ultimately booked it. So this gives me a really powerful file management solution that's anchored to my Intacct dimensions, but I don't have to do anything to create this. Just the activity of filling out forms is going to create this view, if you will. And I would have this obviously at the customer level, vendor level, project level, whatever the case may be. So that's one of the reasons why, although it's a very simple and singular focused application, a single page application, there's a lot of functionality that just by building forms and workflows really kind of helps drive a more enterprise oriented solution for not only forms and workflows, but also file management. Now, to talk a little bit about, how do we go about doing this? What do we mean by no code versus low code? Well, no code means that you do not have to be a developer. That means that the team that currently works for your team today can do this with some training and some tutorials and maybe our assistance just at first by kind of getting started. So the idea here is that I would go to my form designer and I've really got two different scenarios. Either A, I'm going to build kind of more of a standalone form. Maybe it's a scorecard or PTO request. It's something that doesn't go anywhere to Intacct, but it is important, and maybe it does reference an employee or it does reference a vendor, but there's really no place for it in Intacct. Well, in that case, I can just do just like apples to apples, build a form, just like a Google form. So, these are the answer types here to the left. I can drag and drop, click to configure, and then this is where I can build really any form structure that I want. This, a lot of people are kind of impressed with how deep our application can go in regards to the configurability at an answer type level. and we continually make enhancements to this as we go as well. So the first part of it is that you can definitely apples to apples replace really any other forms engine that you might have. Just in the last year, we replaced FormStack's largest client by volume. We tackled effectively every charter school in South Florida, the vendor onboarding, application process, the pay request, billions of dollars in AP, all funnels through the system. That was FormStack's, it used to be FormStack's project. Now that's this application fully integrated. We did a lot of SharePoint swap outs, OneDrive, kind of half-baked implementations, real easy to kind of migrate those solutions over into this ecosystem, just because it's fairly quick to be able to kind of take an existing form and then recreate. Now, the next phase of that is, okay, I'm building a form, but this is going to impact Intacct. So then the way that we effectively provide a solution for that is we invented this concept called a cluster. And a cluster is the extension of your Sage Intacct application into a form. So it's effectively more of a mapping exercise. So let's just kind of start with a very simple example. Is let's say I want to onboard vendors. Better than getting an emailed W-9 or an email with some sensitive information with wiring instructions and whatnot. We'd like them to fill out a form that's maybe under password protection, or maybe it's just something that they fill out that goes through a workflow and a review process. In that case, we'll just build a form for this. So I'll come in here and I'll say, vendor onboarding. And in this case, I'll go to the vendor object down here, which is available to me, and I'll drag this over. And rather than kind of guessing at the questions and answers, this is just what information in Intacct would I key in. It's vendor type, but these are always going to be suppliers, so I can simply come here and default the value to suppliers, for example. Maybe it's coming in and putting a tax ID number, or these are all individuals because this is some kind of sign up as an independent contractor thing. So it's really just kind of a checking off of what values do I want to key in to Sage Intacct. Now, in addition, we can kind of come in here and say, okay, well, this is going to be the name, their first and last name, their phone number, maybe their cell phone, email, website. We'll call it website here. And then down here, we'll get into the address as well. So these are the kind of elements that if you kind of have an idea of what you do today inside of Intacct, it's very easy to recreate the same experience. So and same thing with ACH information and then wiring instructions as well. So the concept here is really just pointing and clicking and configuration. Now you're not limited here. This could be a whole application process where you're going to continue on building questions and answers, or maybe you need them to sign off and acknowledge some terms of service, right? It's still within the form designer. So you can continually building elements on that maybe don't go to Intacct, but you have that freedom to be able to do that. So building forms is very easy, whether it's generic, maybe it's just doing a vendor onboard form like this, where it's more of a mapping exercise. We also kind of take it a step further in some of the more sophisticated ones. So like, let's say, for example, you're using purchasing. Well, we can use purchasing in two parts. Well, purchasing is very configurable. You might have a lot of interdependencies, custom fields, user-defined dimensions. You've set up your own transaction definitions, right? Which can sometimes make it difficult for third parties to play nicely in. Well, we effectively read that setup. So for example, let's say we wanted to extend out a purchase request, and these are non-accounting users, but you need to be able to raise this from your department, maybe get your department manager to review it, and then have it hit Intacct at a particular definition. Well, in that case, we can go to purchasing basic, which is the create function. And just like the vendor, this is where now you don't have to mold to the way that this application defines it. This is molding to you. So in this case, I want these to go in as purchase orders. And same concept is that I'm now going to ask for an attachment, but we're going to say upload a quote, and we're going to require that, right? And then the same concept true with how we code it out. If we do, project coding or departments and locations, right? All of that's fair game to effectively add to here for the cadence, relabel accordingly. And again, I'm just building out effectively a mobile experience, tablet experience, or desktop experience for extending out a purchase requisition, but it's still respectful of how I've set up my Sage Intacct. So these are the types of levels of sophistication. So just to kind of talk through these, anything that we're going to send into credit card for cash management, time and expense, whether that be time oriented or expense oriented, time sheets as well, any purchase requisitions, purchasing conversions, which is usually like a draw request off of a blanket PO, something to that effect. Maybe it's award recipient that draws down against an award. Those are all fair game. We can also send in AP bills, and then we have vendor create, project create, customer creates, and also around the AR side, order entry and AR invoices. So these are all kind of the base clusters that we do. We're constantly adding to this as we go as well, and kind of enhancing these functions. But we can also perform custom services like doing a journal entry for statistical reporting, or maybe it's just a journal entry to kind of help, however you guys account for certain things. So we have a lot of flexibility in our form designer, but it's all generally targeted in designing complete end-to-end workflows with a dynamic system with us, but also connecting to a dynamic system in what you have with Sage Intacct. So once I've built the form on the front end, and obviously, there's a lot going on here, but there's nothing that you couldn't teach somebody over, over a couple of week period on how to build forms. Once we get the front end configuration done, we then get into kind of the workflow capabilities. Now, workflow capabilities, there's a lot of functionality from this standpoint. And we can leverage either Sage Intacct data, so like who you list as the project manager at the project level. So we can reference Sage data. We can also reference more like our hierarchy inside of our system. Now, again, these are people that sometimes don't have Intacct credentialing, so they're outside of the system potentially. So that's why some companies will opt for our organizational structure, just a larger base of people. But you can see here in our organization, you have like the different divisions. The rectangles are the employees, but the circles are the people that don't work for you. And they can even be involved in this workflow too, because you might have a customer kicking off a request, or a vendor submitting in a vendor bank account information change form or something to that effect, or a draw request. So the circles are these people that we define their relationships and give them a portal to access our company. So customers, clients, board members, ex-employees with options, interns, like these are shareholders. These are all, our relationship types, right? So the idea here is that when we're building these forms and these workflows, we now have effectively a base audience as far as the organizational structure is to build workflows off of. Now, a couple of things that we'll just kind of draw into. If you'll notice, like this is the form here, for example, you'll notice that, and again, this is some test data, so I apologize, but this would be, let's just say, for example, all of the different departments in your company. And so what I try to draw people's attention to is that we call this layered workflow exceptions. And what we mean by that is that there's always kind of like a default rule of thumb, and then you effectively layer in conditions that, well, if it comes in and it's for this department, route this way. And so it really kind of lets you deal with a standard protocol and then deal with the wrinkles and the exceptions with full freedom without jeopardizing the general rule, the general flow. This helps for like, hey, we want a new project or a new grant, and it requires a third signature, or maybe it's just a different workflow altogether. The customer needs to sign off on everything, so we're going to bring them into a portal that's different than normal. So those types of things can be handled with ease in this system because you can always copy from the base and then make adjustments. So an example of this here would be, okay, we have a default rule of thumb, let's just say, that's already in place, but this is a wrinkle to it. So how would I define a wrinkle, and then how advanced can I make this wrinkle? Okay, so one is it could be based upon a couple of conditions at the beginning of the form, either the audience and or how they fill it out. So for example, I could define a random group of people. Maybe it's salespeople we don't trust, right? Or it could be board members, or vendors that start with K. It doesn't matter. So a crowd is completely divorced of any logic. It's just a random group of people that you select, okay? It could be based on your org chart. If it comes from these three organizations here, this is the supervisor. So it rolls up, and that's what this workflow applies to. It could be a specific user. The executive director, a board member approves their expense report, right? You don't have to affect the whole workflow. Just if it comes in from Chris or whoever the executive director is, that's what it follows. So you have the ability to say, okay, if it comes in from any of these people and or any conditions on the form, multi-layered, comes in from this group of people for this department, and it's over $1,000, this is the workflow. So you can get very, very specific at the start node, which can drive, do I use this workflow or do I call the default workflow? So this gives you a lot of flexibility, because remember, I'm just kind of saying a specialized condition. Then from within the workflow, I can also kind of put in conditions as well. So you also have the ability to add approval nodes, add conditions of and/or value. You can go up hierarchies if you build out your hierarchy chart or organizational structure. You can also do actions. So like, let's say, for example, this person reviews it first, and then this action, we want to do a custom XML that goes and does a statistical journal entry that says, hey, we got a new applicant. Great, thumbs up. So we can do these types of things. We can send in a custom email that says, hey, you've made it past phase 1 of your review process. So all of these kind of functions are available to us. So like, let's say, for example, in this case, we're gonna do a vendor onboard, okay? The first step could be that, okay, vendor onboard comes in from any of these, it's a link on our website. The accounting user reviews this, it's in charge of vendor compliance. But then after they review it, we may want to go out to a third party and check a vendor's validity. In this case, in the state side, we'll check tax ID. But if there's another third party that you might use for verifying, if they have an API, we can actually tap that API and get a response back in. And then based upon that response, pass or fail, it can effectively divert traffic as far as how do we want to handle it. Then we can kind of get into maybe some conditions. Right, where then it gets into more like dollar amount, if this is greater than or less than 5,000, or if it's a range between 5,000 and 15 and then over 30 or whatever else. All of that's fair game. But then once we get in here to the final level, we'll go to action. And then here is based upon what cluster we're using, it's point and click. If I was using vendor onboard, it'd be vendor create. In this case, it's AP bill, so it's AP bill create. So everything that I'm doing here, whether I'm building the form or I'm setting up my workflows, is all click to configure. Now, I do want to preface this. A lot of our clients will do custom things. And in those cases, all we do is do a custom XML, which might take anywhere between 4 to 5 hours of custom service, but then we can build a custom process as well. That might have some custom logic that's important to you guys. Great, we can still accommodate it. So appreciate all of this flexibility happens at a one-off, like an exception level, right? So you can do a whole heck of a lot with it, but then you can layer these exceptional rules on top of it, and all of that makes for a really powerful workflow engine that's easy to come in and quickly modify. You can go to a department level, at a form level, make the mod, add a wrinkle, adjust, there you go. So it's a very simple system once you kind of get some logic behind it, because building the forms and building the workflow kind of work hand in hand, and that's the repeat as needed that really drives a lot of customers to build processes. So, I'm kind of getting to the end here. We'll talk a little bit about kind of the forms processing here, kind of how the workflow engine works. Now we're going to walk through kind of the actual process of what's feasible here. And so in this case, I've got this become a vendor form. I could have a link on my website for this. I could also just take this link and email. Let's just say, for example, I have a new vendor that I need to onboard. They are going to get a form that looks like this. They're going to fill it out. They're not logged into the portal yet. This is just my way of effectively saying, hey, I need this information from you. You're going to fill it out, and then I'm going to review it. Okay? So they'll go through this process of keying in their information. They'll put in their address, their banking account. They'll attach their W-9, attach a voided check, sign and acknowledge, and they'll hit submit. That'll come in through the review process. Now, me as a reviewer, I'm going to catch that become a vendor. I'm going to review what they put in. I'm going to chat and collaborate with the team that's involved in it. And then if I'm the last level of approval, I'm going to click approve, and that data was automatically submitted in to your Sage instance, just like what you would have done creating a vendor. Okay. Now, what we do from there is up to how far you want to take the scenario. See, in this example, I've actually got a portal created that I want my vendors to experience. So I actually came in here and I named it North Pole Vendor. You see, I did a little Santa Claus theme. And then I've built some functions in here where I wanted them to be able to submit their invoice and check their invoice status, get qualified, things of this nature. So what happens is I just created a vendor with the correct created a vendor where that email address that was on the vendor file is associated to now the correct vendor ID. So when I come in as a vendor, I'll get emailed an invitation to the portal because it's been now approved. And when I log in, I have to go set up my credentials. And then once I'm now in the system, this is now based upon that vendor ID that's associated with my email address. That's what's controlling my experience here. So this system now knows that I'm a vendor and the correct vendor of Stephen Jordan. So if I wanted to, now I'm in the portal, I could go update my vendor information. Because it knows I'm Stephen Jordan, this says, hey, this is what Intacct says. It says about you as a vendor. What do you need to change? And this would be based upon what you would allow me to change. Address, ACH information, wiring instructions, things like that. I could also check status of my payment. If I click here on my invoices, this is going to give me a dashboard of maybe my previous draw requests, as well as my AP bill history. This is going to allow me to take it to an Excel spreadsheet, see if it's been paid or not, see my history as well, and so I can quick search this accordingly. In addition to this, I can also kick off my invoice. So let's say, for example, we're using purchasing and I'm giving blanket POs to my suppliers to bill against. Then I can come in and I can say, okay, well, I need to do a purchase requisition. I got an email that said PO 31 is ready to bill. So these would just be my POs, and I'll put in PO 31. When I do that, it backfills all the commitment data. I can put in my invoice number. I attach my invoice here, and I'll try to sneak one through and try to overbill you real quick, and it won't let me. So it forces compliance of that I now have to align my invoicing to how you created the PO for me. And this is what we see by putting security in Rails and implementing Sage Intacct for purchasing, is that this becomes a very powerful way to mitigate fraud and risk exposure, because there's no emails. It's all internal controls that ultimately approve that purchase order, right? That got to that point. That's all I can bill you is based upon what that PO was approved internally. And so this now lets me kind of come in here and say, well, I'm drawing against it $1,200 a month, right? I'm not ready to bill this because this is phase 2 of the project and we're not there just yet. And this is obviously where I could, it's a form. So this could be like, take completion photos to justify whether or not you actually are deserving of that $1,200. And you can sign this and submit it and acknowledge other things as well. So this concept here is whether I'm kicking off one that's maybe more purchasing oriented, or maybe B, just doing a check request that's a little bit more like an AP invoice. All of that's fair game from this portal. It's all controlled and secure. And then also, if I do submit this form in, I also have an inbox. So I'll get an email with a note, what they said about it. It'll link me back into here. And now instead of sending emails back and forth, now we're having portal chat collaboration about the particular form that we're working on. So this is really the application in general. There's a lot going on here that definitely you can explore in. But the long and the short of this is really summed up in one of our clients, Academica. I'm just gonna kind of make this a little bit bigger here. But this is actually the Forms actually largest client. We do about 2 billion in payables, 18,000 vendors. They do all their AP entry. And for them, it's elimination of risk, eliminating of manual errors, no more data entry. It's all just portal approval and review process. And we're just extending out valid data collection upstream. And all of that leads to better decision making. And also it's swimming in the same direction of Sage in regards to their concept of, or their goal of ultimately getting to the continuous close. The way that we get to continuous close is maximizing the value of the core ERP system, Sage Intacct, and then companion tools like this one that help clean up and broaden data collection so that we're getting all of that data flowing in on a daily basis. So that's kind of all I had in regards to kind of showing you the application. Obviously, the same way that we're doing vendor onboarding, we can be talking about customers and grant making and all of those things. It really is a very malleable solution that frankly, every customer uses it slightly different, but it's really based upon what makes them successful.
Awesome. So we have some time for a few questions. So I'll just jump right in. First question, Chris, are your servers hosted in Canada?
Correct. Yeah, we have the standard location is central U.S., but we do have a Canadian region that, upon request, we can have it located if that requires. To the customer.
Awesome. Second question here I'm seeing, is there a limit to number of forms or portal users?
Yeah, correct. So no limit. That's one of the big value propositions here is that you can build as many forms as you want. Sometimes it's just vendor onboarding. Sometimes it's the entire forms library. We have clients that all have 50, 60 processes built out in the application. So there's no limit. And also no limit in portal relationships either. So you can have 1 million vendors and donors. Those don't count towards your users.
Awesome. Let's see. I think we have about time for one more question. So, do you support custom fields and user-defined dimensions?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. So what generally happens too is if we're in the middle of implementing or you're just buying Intacct and implementing Intacct, it can be nice to bring us in addition, or maybe you're opening up a module because there's some things that that you can do in conjunction by setting up a custom field that we can sync down and maybe route off of or populate that might give you some additional reporting value that you need. Those are some things that we can definitely work in conjunction with the dynamics of Sage Intacct and ours as well. But yes, we support custom fields and the user-defined dimension capability in Sage Intacct.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for presenting and the demonstration. And thank you to everybody for joining us. Like I said before, if you did ask questions and you left them in the chat, you will receive a follow-up email. And you also will receive an email of this recording so you can go back to reference. Please take a look at the screen. Feel free to scan the QR code. We'll have some more information in follow-up emails as well. But that's really it from us today. Really appreciate your time, and everyone have a great rest of your day. Thanks.